Alright, so these are the different quadrilaterals that we have. So raise your hand if you have, number 1. Or who has number 1 in here? Who's got number 1? Alright, on number 1, okay, remember, don't forget I'm recording. Quadrilateral number 1 is where the diagonals are not congruent, where the diagonals are not perpendicular. So before we start, let me show you what we're talking about diagonals. Now, diagonals are what you'll see me draw on the board. They are two segments that cross like this. Okay? And so you're creating the diagonals that you're later going to do this with. You're later going to draw the quadrilateral. And you're going to figure out what kind of quadrilateral you have. And that's what your presentation is going to be about. You're going to determine what quadrilateral you have and then prove that to us. So you're making the green thing so that you can make the orange. Does that make sense? That's what you're creating. Now, if you have number 1, depending on how you take this, you could have one of the easiest ones. It says that they are not congruent, so when you create your diagonals, and if it ever, look at your paper too, if it says not perpendicular, not bisect each other, anytime it says do not, raise your hand if you have a not in your description. Then you have to make it very, very distinctively not congruent. So I'm going to go back here to GeoGebra. Click on GeoGebra Geometry. When you do the not, anytime they're not perpendicular, not congruent, when you make these, I just clicked on the segment. When you make these, alright, you want to make them not congruent. So if you make one like this, and you make one like this, we have to measure it to know how long they are, but they don't look very different. If it says they are not, you want to make them very different. So this one we want to make it a lot, see how this one is more obvious that they're not the same size, right? This one looks a lot smaller than this one. You want to make it obvious that they are not the same size. Now, that's what congruent means. Perpendicular is the angle where they cross, and if it says, raise your hand if yours says that they are perpendicular. Raise your hand if yours says that they are perpendicular. Okay, there should be at least 1, 2, 3, 3 people that raise their hand, and no one's raising their hand right now. Look at your paper, and it says that they are perpendicular. 1. Raise your hand if it says that they are perpendicular. Yeah. Alright, so if they're perpendicular, here's what you have to do. So please look up here. If they are perpendicular, here's what you have to do. Alright. You have to measure the angle. Okay? If they're perpendicular, if it says that they're not perpendicular, you have to measure the angle. So, you need to put a point here first to measure the angle. So, do you see where here's this segment, here's this other segment? You're going to put a point where they cross. Okay? Now you're going to click on more, and you're going to go to measure, because we need to measure the angle. This is the one that says angle. Okay? Even tells you how to do it right here. It says select 3 points, and there's even a little button. Now you can't see it. There it goes. That says help, and it'll show you how to do it too. So you need to measure this angle. If it says that they are perpendicular, then it has to be 90 degrees. If they are not perpendicular, raise your hand if yours says that they're not perpendicular. Okay? You're put it on the end. So it said you had to raise your hand out for one of them. They are or they're not. You just raise your hand because I said it. Okay, they had to be all very, very different than 90 degrees. So click on this one. Click on this one. And you can see this angle right there. Do you see how it formed? Do you see how it's got the marking? So this angle right here, that's not letting me move it for some reason. Okay, you got to click on this. There it goes. Okay, it's 101, right? You can move it so it's not close to 90 at all. See, that's not close to 90, right? So far? Okay. The last one, they do not bisect each other. Raise your hand if yours says they do bisect each other. Raise your hand if yours says they do bisect each other. Okay, that means that's probably going to be the first part that you do. Okay, that's probably should be the first one that you do. Okay, what does bisect mean? That means that this is the midpoint for both of them. Okay, it means it's the midpoint for both of them. So what you would need to do is you can click on construct for midpoint. And okay, if I click on this one, it tells me right there it's the midpoint. So if I click here and here at the end, that's the midpoint. If they bisect each other, I'll show you this one and this one. Do you see the midpoints here? The way this has to work for them to bisect each other, this has to be the same one as this one. So I'm actually going to delete everything and show you that. Let's save. What? I want to click on everything and delete it. Alright, so I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to let you get started. Okay, so I made this segment, right? And then I click on midpoint. Click on this, the two endpoints, that's the midpoint. Alright, and then I'm going to make another segment. And I'm going to make the midpoint, so construct, and then the midpoint. Click on this one, click on this one. There's the midpoint. Do you see that? And these two midpoints have to be on top of each other. That's what that means to bisect each other. That they have the same midpoint. Alright? You got to do that part first. Now, if it says that they are, I think this one and number 6 are the only two that say it, that they are perpendicular and they bisect. Now, if they're perpendicular and they bisect, so there's two people in here that have perpendicular and bisect. If you have that, Arnaldo, then when you click, you got to click on construct, and then you have to click on perpendicular bisector. It's the third one. Perpendicular bisector. It says select 2 points and or a segment. So you're going to click on those, and it's going to draw the perpendicular bisector line. That's a line. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to draw a segment on that line. Okay? You're going to have to draw a segment set on that line. And then you're going to have to construct the midpoint and make sure that they have the same midpoint. Right now they don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oh, not that. Where'd that point come from? I'm going to have to move it so that they have the same midpoint. Okay?